All right, welcome into a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast. I'm your co-host Ryan Stern. Joined with me, as always, Derek Mountain. Derek, today was definitely a game-changing day for this country that we're living in, and I know right now they're doing that big concert. And Bruce was supposed to be opening up with Land of Hope and Dreams, and right now I feel that I'm living in a land of hope and dreams. But there are four teams in the NFL that still have their hopes and dreams alive, and we've got conference championship round this week. How you doing?
Good. You said it. It was a breath of fresh air. Today was definitely a breath of fresh air. It was a nice change of pace. Got to take a little bit of a breather, so that was really nice. And in terms of the football landscape, that was the last Saturday football we will see for the year.
Yeah,
we only got 3 games left, so got to cherish these final moments of NFL football we got for the rest of the year.
Dave Damashek, who was with NFL media for quite some time, had put out a tweet during the fourth quarter of the Chiefs Browns game after the Mahomes injury, and he said, because at that time there were 5 games left, and he said there are 5 games remaining in the NFL season, and I don't want a majority of them filled with Chad Henne. For football fans' sake, let's hope Patrick Mahomes is able to get back to the field.
Okay, well, just maybe think of something. He was a full participant in practice today, so I think signs are looking good for him playing. But the conference championship, these QB matchups, Mahomes, Allen, Brady, Rodgers, there has not been a better featuring of quarterbacks at this stage in any season. There's no way. Look how far we've come since 2017 when we got Foles and Keenum versus Tom Brady and Bortles. I mean, it's going to be so much fun to watch, and not having a horse in the race, like personally, it makes it better. I think it makes it better.
Stress-free football is always
exactly.
It's always better for you personally when you do have a horse in the race.
Yeah.
But being able to watch football without having a horse in the race, with not having to worry about what is my team going to be able to make the adjustments, and feeling like you're just on the edge of your chair. It's definitely better for the heart.
Absolutely. I mean, it's 4 really good teams too. Like, I don't have a problem with any of them playing in the Super Bowl, and I could see all of them winning in their own way. I really could.
Right, and from a fantasy perspective, you have 4 of the top 6 quarterbacks in fantasy football this year playing in the Super Bowl. The only 2 that aren't Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson. And there's a lot of news about Deshaun Watson. What seemed to be, there's no way they're going to trade Deshaun Watson. They can't trade, and now it seems inevitable that it's going to happen.
And it's the quickest way for them to rehash what they have. They just don't have any pieces to build off of in terms of draft capital, money. I mean, Bill O'Brien really set them back, and the quickest way to restoring some sense of hope and some sense of capital in that organization is trading Deshaun Watson.
Oh, imagine being a Houston Texans fan right now, and having them trade away DeAndre Hopkins one summer, and the next summer trading away Deshaun Watson. I would have a hard time rooting for my team this year. No, and get it. I get it. They need to do what's best for the future of the team. And if they're able to get a starting quarterback plus 3 picks, because I've heard rumors that the Jets are willing to offer Darnold plus 2 firsts and a second. it would be really hard to turn that down, knowing how many holes you need to fill on your team, plus with the little draft capital that you have.
And it's a really tough situation because he's entering his prime. He had such a remarkable season for a 4-win team, but his draft value is never going to be higher. He's not happy. If you hold on to him, it's not like your team's going to get any better. It's going to be the exact same situation. They're going to have to overhaul that roster even more. We've talked about maybe getting rid of J.J. Watt. Whitney Merciless is a pretty brutal contract. Other veterans on that team on the offensive side of the football, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse for Houston for the next year or two at least. And what's the point of wasting Deshaun's prime when you can get so much for him right now?
So Deshaun Watson actually led the NFL in passing yards this year. Yep. Think about that. He lost one of the top 2 receivers in the entire NFL and still led the NFL in passing, and he lost his number 1 receiver for the last 5 games of the season.
He was throwing to Kiki QT and Chad Hansen for the last 5 weeks of the season. Yeah. Like, what he did was nothing short of just insane. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what I want to do before any trade happens, I want to get somebody to join the show who is so familiar with how the cap situation will work, so that we can talk about with them the actual logistics of what it would mean for the team trading away Deshaun Watson and the team trading for Watson. So we'll get into that, but we've got bigger fish to fry this week. We got some coaching hires to talk about. Then we'll do a little bit of breakdown from last week's games, and then we'll look ahead to championship week. So we'll talk about some of the coaching hires that have been made. And so we'll start at the top of the draft, and with the most notable name. So you got the Jacksonville Jaguars hiring Urban Meyer, and I mean, this is a move that I know we've talked about before, the possibilities of this having, and I don't think either one of us are on board with Urban Meyer in the NFL. His biggest advantage in college was his ability to recruit. He can't do that in the NFL. Maybe in terms of a couple free agents, but you're not going to be able to build the team that you want to build from scratch the way you're able to do in college. He's going to need to bring in a really good X's and O's team around him, because I don't necessarily think he's the best X's and O's coach around. What are your thoughts on Urban Meyer's fit in Jacksonville now that it actually it has come true?
Well, a couple of things stick out to me. I mean, he's indebted to Florida, University of Florida, where he had coached for 6 years in what's now almost a decade ago. It doesn't feel that long, but it's been that long. And I think it's a fiery fan base in Duval County. It's a college town, so it's going to have a lot of excitement. I think that's what Urban Meyer's hire brings, is a lot of excitement, and you get Trevor Lawrence now. I just have a lot of red flags that pop up into my head immediately. I mean, he's never been at a stop longer than 7 years. He had to stop coaching at Florida and Ohio State related to health issues and stress levels, which is conducive to coaching. But what's more stressful than an NFL head coaching job? He is not proven at this level. It's a lot more volatile than the college level. So, yes, he signed a long-term deal, but they're not necessarily going to wait for Urban Meyer to work out as long as Trevor Lawrence is on his rookie contract. I'm not saying he's going to get fired after a year or two, because they're probably going to win 6 or 7, maybe 7 games if they're good next year. But it's probably going to be another 1 or 2 seasons of 6-7 win seasons in Jacksonville. Not necessarily a playoff contender yet, because they have a really young roster.
Yeah.
It has a lot of potential. Like, Urban Meyer can work with a young roster because they don't know any better. It's similar to a college landscape. I don't think it would work with a veteran-laden team, but we'll see. Will his message die down a little bit as we see with these authoritarian figures? I don't think it's necessarily as severe as a Nick Saban was in Miami, where he was just cursing out guys and questioning their manhood. These grown men, including guys like Zach Thomas and Dante Culpepper. Like, I don't envision that. Yeah, I don't envision that happening. But it's such a different landscape. It's such a different ballgame from college, and we've seen a lot of guys struggle with it. The best case scenario is a guy like Jimmy Johnson in the 90s with the Cowboys. I mean, they struck gold there, but it's way different now. It's so much different in 2020 how you coach these players. So I'm intrigued by it. I think it creates a lot of excitement, but I also think they could have got just about any coach. They could have got about any candidate because they have – they're as resourceful as it comes, as I've ever seen in an offseason. It's interesting that they had this pool and they went in that direction.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a team that's going to have a lot of cap money, a lot of cap space to spend. And if you're an offensive player, you're going to look at it and say, are the Jaguars necessarily a great fit for me? Maybe not the Jaguars of the past couple of years, but now you have Trevor Lawrence. You have a coach with some respect in Urban Meyer, and you also have. I mean, you have the Florida. There's no state income tax, so you actually get more of your salary in Florida than you would in most of the other states.
Beautiful weather too. We're seeing that with Tom Brady. I mean, he has spoken about it a bunch, but it's just the living conditions of New England versus the Tampa Bay. There are obvious advantages, especially when you play this deep into the season.
Yep. So I mean, for me, it's an interesting location, especially like I said, for offensive free agents. And you got a couple real big name wide receivers, including one that used to reside in Jacksonville. Does he decide to come back with Trevor Lawrence instead of Blake Bortles? And that would be Allen Robinson. All right, so now at number 2 we have the New York Jets hiring Robert Saleh from the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. And you hear from anybody who's played on a Robert Saleh defense, and they want to play ball for this guy. He's able to get the most out of his players, and he's had a lot of great talent on those San Francisco defenses. But look what he was able to do. This year. The 49ers defense was still one of the better units in the entire league, and they were without Bosa. They were without Sherman for a good portion of the year. They lose DeForest Buckner in the offseason. This was just a group that was injury-riddled the entire season, and they still came to play for him every year. And he's one of those guys who I think is going to be able to get the most out of his players. And it's a completely and I see it a lot with NFL teams that if they're firing an offensive coach, they look to the defensive side. And that's what you have here. But this isn't just about offense versus defense. This is about creating a whole new culture within the Jets. After that mess that was Adam Gase and, frankly, the past couple coaches that they had before him. I think this was one of the smartest moves of the offseason, if not the smartest.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I love this hire from every aspect. And you brought it up with Urban Meyer. And I think with these guys, a guy like Salah who doesn't have head coaching experience, he has to nail his coordinating hires and his assistants. And from this standpoint right now, he's done that. He got Mike LaFleur from San Fran, their passing game coordinator, the brother of Matt LaFleur, to be their offensive coordinator. He got the O-line coach of San Fran, John Benton, to fill the same role in New York. So you can get an entire revamp of this offense overnight, and the big buzzword now is offensive guru, get the next McVay in terms of a head coach. You don't need that to find a state-of-the-art offense. And I think we're going to see that with New York next year. They're going to try to create a 49ers light situation, maybe not to their degree right now with Shanahan, but you get Mekhi Becton going in an outside zone running scheme. They draft Justin Fields or Zach Wilson second. They have almost as much cap money as the Jaguars. I think they're projected about $70 million going into free agency. They draft an intriguing running back, a guy like Javonte Williams, Najee Harris. I mean, this offense could go from the doormat of the NFL to a really exciting young offense. And as you said, as the defensive coach, the marker of a good coach is maximizing his talent, and he has done that. They were top 10 in about every metric, and they were playing with their fourth and fifth corners for months on end in the beginning of the season. Their D-line was absolutely decimated, as you said. I love this hire. If you're not familiar, listen to what Richard Sherman says when he vows for Salah in the middle of the season. Have your opinions about Sherman. I get he's polarizing, but he is authentic. He doesn't really have a filter, and I don't think he has a reason to lie when he vows for a guy like Salah. And I think players are going to love him. I love the fit. I think Joe Douglas, the GM, has done an awesome job since he's gotten there. I'm excited for the Jets' future.
Yeah, and you know that you're going to see some form of the Kyle Shanahan offense.
I'm excited for that.
In. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the Jets look at their running back situation, because what have you seen from both Shanahans? You've seen them be able to maximize the production from running backs that aren't necessarily those first, second round picks. You've seen Landis Gary rush for 1,000 yards. Raheem Mostert have success.
Mike Anderson.
Jeff Wilson Jr., Mike Anderson. All these guys have been relevant under the Shanahan tutelage. So it'll be interesting to see if they say, well, I think we have something here with a Ty Johnson, with a LaMichael Pirine. And maybe they're able to maximize those players and fill holes other ways. I can see that being a way that they go as well.
Yeah, LaMichael Pirine did some nice things this year. Adam Gase really hampered his development because of his love for Frank Gore. Pirine's another guy, and he's going to rotate. He's going to use at least two, probably three guys in that system. I imagine Mike LaFleur will do that.
And they're going to make a trade. I don't know which trade it's going to be. It's either going to be that they're going to trade Sam Darnold for extra picks, or they're going to trade the number 2, or
to a QB needy team.
To a QB needy team, or maybe both of them are involved in a Deshaun Watson trade. Although I think I don't know if necessarily they'll want to go after Darnold. They may just say, give us an extra draft pick, and at number 2, we'll take Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that'll be, but I just don't see a way that the Jets hang on to number 2 and Sam Darnold. I just think there's too much that they can capitalize on at that spot. Next up is the Detroit Lions, and they hire. This was the most surprising move. They hire the assistant head coach and tight ends coach of the New Orleans Saints, Dan Campbell. Last time we saw him as a head coach, he was an interim head coach with Miami, and let's hope he can, for Detroit's sake, bring in as many wins as he brings in biceps.
I was going to say this is an attitude hire if it's anything, because he looks like he could suit up today. He, I mean, he was a former player, former tight end in the league, and he went right
into
the
Giants. He was with the Giants for a bit.
Yeah, so and players love him. Players loved him in Miami. Players loved him in New Orleans. So I think that falls in hand with what Detroit wanted. They want a culture hire. And they wanted to steer away from Matt Patricia and all the distaste that he brought to that organization and that city. And I think they need a sense of pride back. And that's the sense I get, the mood I get from that Campbell hire. It's definitely surprising. He has no coordinating experience. He doesn't have any play calling experience. But you also don't need those requirements to be a good head coach. You can be a CEO type of leader and surround yourself with great assistants. That's my biggest question. He comes from a great organization, New Orleans. Who did he know there? Who's he going to bring with him? And who are going to be his assistants? Because that's going to be everything, I think, at Detroit.
And one thing that you saw, and it's funny with, although you look at his game and he was more of the blocking tight end than he was a receiving tight end. But you look at the Miami Dolphins offense when they were under his tutelage, and they were one of the most run-heavy offenses in the league. So if you're a dynasty owner of a DeAndre Swift, this move probably makes me get a little excited.
The Brad Holmes hire, who was the director of college scouting in LA, he is now the Detroit Lions GM. He had an interesting quote this week. Take with it what you will. I think any GM would probably say the same thing in his position, but he said that the Lions are in a position to retool and not rebuild. And what I read between the lines there is that Matthew Stafford is staying as of right now. Now, I think things evolve and change, but I think they're going to try to make it work with Stafford. Maybe they keep their options open in terms of trade offers as the draft looms closer. But I think they're going to try to give it a year or two and see what they got with Stafford.
They're also in a difficult situation because their top two wide receivers are free agents. Obviously, you would think that if they wanted to keep one, Golladay would be at the top of their priority list. But there are going to be a lot of teams, because there's a lot of teams out there who are in need of a wide receiver one. And Kenny Golladay is a wide receiver one when he's healthy and on the field. I know there's a lot of talk up here in northern New Jersey that the Giants are going to make Kenny Golladay their number one priority. If you give me either Kenny Golladay or Allen Robinson, I'm a happy camper.
I was going to say that is a win for New York if they could do that. That would their offense looks completely different if they got one of those guys.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, and they hire a one-year defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, who was the Rams. So he doesn't have to move. He's just going to change locker rooms. So he was the defensive coordinator with the number one defense in the league this past year, and I know we were talking a little bit about this before the show. Brandon Staley sure looked like he did the most with what he had, or not with what he had, but in terms of success within a grouping. But almost like with Adam Gase having Peyton Manning, sometimes it's easy to be a defensive coordinator if you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are probably the best at their positions respectively. They just are. And I'm not going to say they aren't a huge piece of the puzzle in that defense, but I also think this unit was just so in sync. Yeah. The Packers were really the first team to solve that puzzle that is the Rams defense. They were methodical. They didn't necessarily test them down the field until they brought extra guys in the box in the second half, and the Packers were gashing them, and that's how the Lazard touchdown happened. But this defense gave just about everyone fits this year. No one dominated this unit. It's something that we're just not accustomed to in 2020 football and how good offenses are. And I think the way that he thinks about defense is revolutionary with how many too high looks that he presents in his defense. I think that's going to become a mold of future defenses in the NFL. In terms of the hire, though, I do have a lot of questions. We talked about with a guy like Bieniemy and his qualifications. I mean, he was the D coordinator John Carroll 4 years ago in 2016. He was an outside linebackers coach under Vic Fangio for a couple of years. His expertise, his thinking is brilliant. I think he is an innovator of defense, and it's a nice splash hire. And I think it's good to see more young guys get opportunities, especially on the defensive side of the football. But from the outside, I mean, I don't necessarily get too excited about a defensive hire against the Chargers when I got to play the Chiefs twice a year. I don't get excited about when I've Herbert and I have an opportunity to snag a guy like Bieniemy or Brian Dable, who I think from the outside looking in, those look like the shoe-in top two candidates. So I have my questions about that stuff. I mean, the Chargers' defensive talent, when healthy, it's top 3 or top 5, no doubt about it. I can see
the key words are when healthy, because Derwin James has every right to say that he's the best safety in the entire league when he's out on the field. The problem with Derwin James is that he's never out on the field.
Joey Bosa. I mean, Joey Bosa, when he plays, unbelievable. But
how many times in the final 2 drives of a game did we see Joey Bosa on the field, on the sidelines, because he was either gassed or nicked up and just wasn't capable of playing? It was too many.
Exactly. And I don't know what that speaks to with the Chargers, because it's every year, it seems like. But if they can stay healthy, I could see him reap similar rewards as he did with the Rams. I think this defense could be a top 3 scoring defense next year with Brandon Staley if they stay healthy. But just know you got to beat your division. If it was me, I would have leaned offensive. I think scoring points is the new way you win now. And against the Chiefs, you have to outscore them. You're not going to be able to contain a Patrick Mahomes. You're just not. You can hope to slow him down a little bit, and I think that's the best chance of beating him. But you got to be able to score. I would have liked them to hire someone that would have molded and helped develop Herbert. So I'm interested. Who are they going to go after as their OC? Are they going to keep a guy like Pep Hamilton for continuity because he had so much success there? Or are they going to go in another direction? I think it's a really interesting situation in LA.
And I think that the 2 names that you brought up are, to me, still clear. They were probably at the top of my list before any of the hires were made. And yet they're still there, and that with Bieniemy and Gable, there are still 2 teams that are in need of head coaches. And as a Giants fan, I would be. It would upset me if either one of those 2 ended up in Philadelphia. I know for you, this has to be a situation that you'd be like, oh my goodness, how are we still able to either land Bieniemy or Gable?
Well, there's a report that came out this week. He was not interested in the Eagles job, and he's coming back next year to Buffalo. So I mean, I believe that 100%. He's got a great situation in Buffalo. There's no reason he wouldn't just help elevate his status. He'd probably be the number 1 candidate in next offseason, have his choice at whatever job he wanted. And I've said it. Why would you want the Eagles job? And also the Texans are the same sentiment. Why would you want those jobs if you're a qualified head coaching candidate and you can come back and get more opportunities next year? It's not worth jumping into this business if it's not a stable situation. And Philly and Houston are anything but that right now. It's nothing but chaos in those organizations.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna now flip to a couple teams that are in much better situations. That's the teams that are still alive in the playoffs. We'll look a little bit at last week's games. Boy, some of these games were fun. And I mean, we had a couple ones that were okay, but And especially the one that I was looking forward to the most was probably the biggest yawn fest of the weekend. But I know we got into it a little bit. The Packers held off the Rams 32-18. Aaron Rodgers with just one of his efficient Aaron Rodgers days. 23 of 36, 296, 2 touchdowns, plus he added a rushing touchdown. I mean, the MVP just played another MVP game.
Yes, he did. He's on another planet this year. I think you're seeing total buy-in into LaFleur's system, which is just a branch of the Shanahan system. It's the wide zone scheme where they have a lot of stuff dependent on the run game and play action. But, Rodgers on his own as well. Dropping back, he's unbelievable. So I just think it's such a versatile offense. You see 2 back, you see 2 tight ends, you see 4 wide receiver sets. You see a lot of 3-by-1 stuff where they're singling up Davante Adams. And Jalen Ramsey struggled with Davante Adams. And Jalen Ramsey has struggled with no one this year. But Davante Adams was slicing him up like he was just another guy. This offense, besides 1 or 2 bad games this year, they're just ridiculous every week. They just look so good every single week. And they did against the best defense in football easily this week.
Did you see the quote that the microphones picked up from Davante Adams when he was chirping to Jalen Ramsey?
What did he say?
He said, "I'm not some of the dudes you've covered." and he's not wrong. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL right now.
He's ridiculous.
And not only is he the best wide receiver in the NFL, but when you pair him with probably the best quarterback in the NFL, it's just he had 17 or 18 touchdowns and he missed 2.5 games.
Yes, he's had I think 38 touchdowns the last 2 years or the last 3 years, which is the most among pass catchers. And I feel like he always misses a month each year. Imagine if how ridiculous his stats would be if he played every single game.
He's just one of those. He's elite. he has reached elite status, and when you have that elite player, it opens up so much more for the other guys. And we've seen at times those other guys from the Packers struggle. Especially with drops. We saw just an egregious drop by Alan Lazard in this game, but that didn't deter Aaron Rodgers. He said, "I still have faith in you. I still have my trust in you," and he paid it off with the game breaking, the icing in the cake touchdown. This team is probably, I think they're the most complete team in the NFL right now.
They got to be the favorite, the Super Bowl favorite among the Final Four right now. I think they have the most favorable matchup in the championship games. And this offense, it just seems like a shoo-in that they're going to score 30 plus, whoever they play right now.
Then we had the night game on Saturday, and that was dominated by wind, Justin Tucker missing field goals left and right, and Lamar Jackson getting concussed and missing the majority of the second half. Josh Allen only had 206 yards. He had 1 on the ground and 1 through the air. The leading rusher in the game was Gus Edwards with 42 yards. And Stephon Diggs is still Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen is going to buy Stephon Diggs a very nice present when he lands his next contract, because Josh Allen went from he was 32nd in the NFL last year in completion percentage, and he was 4th in the NFL in completion percentage this year. That just does not happen. Because if there's one stat that usually that is most consistent from year to year, it's completion percentage. And we even saw that in college with Josh Allen. He was a low completion percentage but high results kind of guy in college. And the first 2 years of his career in the NFL, that's what we saw. And now Stephon Diggs comes around, and Josh Allen is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. And that's with throwing the ball much more than he ever had in his career. The one thing that had been the Achilles heel for the Buffalo Bills this year had been their defense. Their defense has now played 2 pretty good games in a row. And they closed out the regular season with 2 or 3 pretty good defensive games. If this defense can play close to what, obviously they're probably not going to deal with the same weather conditions that they had to deal with this past weekend against Baltimore. But if they're able to bring that same kind of pressure to the game this weekend, I don't say there is, and you said it before, any team can win. It would not shock me if of any of the combinations that we could have in the Super Bowl. It would not shock me.
No, absolutely not. And just speaking of the Bills-Ravens game, the game script was crazy. The wind conditions were obviously affecting both teams, but it didn't affect the way Brian Daboll called a game. It was almost way more radical than what they had been. They're not necessarily a balanced offense, but it's 70, 65, 35 pass run. They like to pass on early downs more so than a lot of other teams. Their first 18 of their first 19 plays were passes, and the one run was a scramble by Josh Allen. I don't know if I've ever seen that, especially in that kind of game.
Yeah.
The confidence that Daboll has in Josh Allen to execute this offense is just, and as you said, from year 1 and year 2, I mean, he made a step. I think he was 52 completion percentage in his rookie year, which is just, it's awful.
And then 59, I think it was last year.
Which is that's a very significant improvement. Right. And then he went all the way to 69.9% this year. I mean, you just don't see that in the NFL. No. He has pinpoint accuracy now in short, intermediate, deep ball phases. He has touch on some passes now instead of just rifling it in there, which he had a tendency to do. I think it was a huge joke about how horrible he was on deep balls. He's really efficient throwing the ball down the field. He's starting to learn to actually hone that talent that he's always had. And as you said, I mean, he was throwing to guys like Duke Williams and Kelvin Benjamin at the beginning of his career. These kind of big catch radius guys, but they can't separate. Now he's got Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis and John Brown. And it's just a perfect array of offensive talent. And the Ravens, for the most part, they did an awesome job. They held them to 10 points. I mean, Teron Johnson's pick 6 put the game away.
Yeah.
So I don't expect Buffalo's offense to have that kind of a showing against Kansas City. The weather conditions, pending weather conditions, I expect Buffalo's offense to explode this week. I think it's going to be a ton of points. I think we're going to see Patrick Mahomes, as we alluded to. He was a full participant in practice today. And I know it, I mean, you know, from the Bills' vibe and from how they're carrying themselves. I mean, they're almost this underdog and they haven't been respected. And I think they have taken up this attitude since their week 6 loss against Kansas City, where they were handled. I mean, the Chiefs are the top dog, but Bills aren't far behind, and they haven't really been treated like that till recently. And I think they've been playing with that edge for the past 2 months. And I'm really intrigued to see this matchup.
So I just pulled up the Kansas City weather forecast. And for Sunday, they're calling for 44 degrees during the day, 10-mile-an-hour winds, occasional rain showers, chance of rain 40%.
That's not affecting either of these offenses.
No. And 40-degree day. I mean, that for Buffalo, that's a 70-degree day for the majority of the country. That excites me. That we're probably going to get a decent weather game. All right, so let's go on to Sunday, and boy, I think the entire the collective gasps were heard countrywide when Patrick Mahomes gets tackled on an option play. It really didn't look all that bad, but I was reading into a lot, and there were a lot of like UFC guys that came out that were watching it, and they said that it is absolutely 100% legit that you can land with someone's arm on your neck and you just go out. It's not you don't need a prolonged choke or anything. That can happen. And I mean, as a football fan, I mean, as someone who had money on the Browns -10, I was okay. But as a football fan, that was the last thing I wanted to see. Patrick Mahomes. If you had to say, here's $100, buy a ticket for any game. To any team in the league, I'm buying a ticket to a Chiefs game so I could watch Patrick Mahomes play football.
Yeah, you hate to see that. It gave Cleveland some life. It was still a 9-point game when he exited the game, and for a moment, it looked like they might actually steal this thing. But I mean, Andy Reid's aggression. I mean, and as an Eagles fan, it is just completely taken in a 180. And I think having a guy like Mahomes helps with that. And we've seen him be one of the more aggressive coaches since he got Mahomes. But he had Chad Henne at the end of this game. He goes for that 4th and 1, and you hear it from Tony Romo and the broadcasting booth. But that 4th and 1 play on the 50, it's – they're going to hard count them. Look at their body language.
Right.
They're going to call a timeout. They're going to boot it. They're going to make Baker go down the field with no timeouts. They send Tyreek in motion. They see that's man coverage. They run the play. They like what they see. And, I mean, fortune favors the bold. I love the play call. I want to see more of that. And the fact that he did with Chad Henne, he's resting on his laurels in a good way. I love to see that. He earned the W with that coaching call. It was awesome. I think the Browns, they were playing with house money, as we talked about. That was an awesome game. They had an awesome season. They were right in it. They could have won that game. They very could have easily won that game. And, of course, we could get into it, but the touchback rule, the infamous touchback rule, absolutely killed any momentum they had in the first half with the Rashad Higgins fumble into the end zone in the first half.
Oh, my goodness.
And they got out of their game script. I mean, Chubb and Hunt, I think, combined for 18 or 19 carries. That's not ideal for them. I still think Baker played a great game. They're missing a pass catcher or two, and Odell will come back next year, but I think they're going to look for a slot guy or some speed on the outside, especially they're going to have a decision with Jarvis Landry whether to keep him or not. And it's got to be all defense this offseason for the Browns because their offense is pretty much there. It's about arrived. I think we need to evaluate Baker a little more. But this defense, they got some nice pieces, but when Mahomes was in there, they were getting absolutely torched.
Yeah, and in the first half, Kareem Hunt had one touch, and that was on an incomplete pass that was not thrown very well by Baker Mayfield. That was the only time that Kareem Hunt touched the ball in the first half.
Can't happen.
No, and especially from that kind of team in that kind of game, what you have to be able to do is dictate the pace against the Kansas City Chiefs. And they weren't able to do that, especially in the first half of that game. They were able. Kansas City scored on all 4 of their first half possessions, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals. They were lucky for it to have only been 19 points.
Yeah.
It very well could have been 27 24. Yeah. So they were lucky that they were in that position, and I mean they did a good job of holding holding them to what they did in the second half. A lot had to do with the injury to Mahomes, but I mean, Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers said it perfectly, that that call by Andy Reid is you can only make that call when you have job security.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he got his Super Bowl last year. I mean, you're right, because I did see that on Twitter where it was like, why don't more coaches make that call? It's like, well, he's built the most real estate in Kansas City. He won their first Super Bowl in 50 years. He is the offensive mastermind. He can do whatever he wants. And I mean, I don't know what would have happened, but I think once they saw they were in man coverage against Tyreek Hill, he needs an inch of separation. I mean, he's just different, that guy. And they were confident in their play call. And I don't know what would have happened if they're in some sort of zone, but I mean, credit to them. That's why they won the game. It was awesome.
Anything is possible. You see, he didn't even know about that. That was a trend.
He's like not active on social media, and they were like, "Yeah, you should probably get on social media. You're like the biggest thing today."
Especially with, I mean, Mahomes is out there promoting anything is possible. I mean, that right there, that tells you the sign of what kind of teammate and leader Patrick Mahomes is.
Definitely.
And to round out divisional round weekend, we had the Bucs and the Saints, and this was a weird game.
Really weird. The first half was just like drunk. It was like gross. There was no rhythm. It was such a weird game.
You had the Saints just throwing away two opportunities in the first quarter. They could have easily had 14, getting in deep into Tampa Bay territory and coming away with 6 points. That right there, that set the pace for the rest of the game. That dictated a lot of momentum for Tampa Bay. They were able to take advantage of a couple Breeze turnovers in each half, and 13-13 at half. If that half literally felt 13-13.
Yeah, I mean, the Murphy Bunting pick six changed everything, because, as you said, the Saints were all over them. They only came up with 6 points in those possessions. And with their offense, with the way Breeze has declined, they just have to score touchdowns there. Points don't come as easily as we're accustomed to with the Saints and Sean Payne and Drew Brees. So that was obviously huge, giving them 6 points. Tom Brady finally got his feet under him in the second half. He didn't play great, but he made the throws he had to make. The Scotty Miller double move conversion is something that pops in my head right away. They had a few drops. Godwin dropped a touchdown. Gronk's corner attempt was a little bit out of reach, just stuff like that. But they had a little bit of a semblance of the run game. Their defense did enough. And you just see the decline of Drew Brees really hampered this team, because their defense was championship caliber, but they had one completion over 16 yards the whole game. They had a handful of completions with over 10 air yards. It was painful to watch Drew Brees. And I get the arm strength stuff. He's 41, but he's also playing with, and we saw his wife after the game Instagram this stuff, but he's playing with the torn rotator cuff, the 11 cracked ribs. I mean, he's an absolute warrior, and I'm going to miss Drew Brees. It's pretty apparent he's probably going to retire. He hasn't officially announced it, but Jay Glazer reported that he's expected to retire. And it was such a weird game for him to go out. It was his first 3 interception game since, I think, 2015 or 2016. It just wasn't a Brees game.
No, and to be honest, Brady wasn't even that good either, but he didn't have to be, because the turnovers just put them in great field position throughout most of the game.
Exactly.
We actually saw some efficiency from the Tampa Bay running game. You had balance between both Fournette and Jones. Jones to me looked like the more explosive of the two. Fournette is the prototypical grinder, but if they're able to establish a run game, that makes them a scary offense. Because do you know Tom Brady led the entire league in passes completed of 20 air yards or more?
I believe it.
It was the first time he had done that in his career.
In that offense,
even in the Randy Moss 50 touchdown year, that was the first time that he led the NFL in completions of 20 air yards or more.
I believe it. Just off the structure of the Patriots is a lot more horizontal and dink and dunk-esque, and they'll take their shots, but they're a lot more calculated. Bruce Arians' offense, they throw that convention out the window. It is risky biscuit football. I mean,
so it was actually the third year in a row that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers led the NFL.
I totally believe that. I mean, watching Jameis last year, and and we've seen it with Bruce Arians quarterbacks. They're usually atop of the league in interceptions, and they also are really explosive in terms of passing yards. And Brady, you're getting at least he's not turnover averse. He only had, I think, 12 picks in this offense, which is a huge win. I mean, he's a great decision maker. And like I alluded to, so the Gronk throw that he just missed on it, he's missing in the right spot. It's a place where the defense can't get it. Just little stuff like that where Jameis was almost blind to the spot and throwing into double and triple coverage and forcing the football down the field. Brady's throwing the football down the field was a lot more efficient. I mean, his touch on some of these throws, his accuracy is still there. He's still got a lot of juice in his arm. I mean, he's immune, that guy. We will not see another guy like him. I mean, he looks like he could still play another 2 or 3 years. He really does.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because obviously after this year, you have to expect that he's coming back at least one more. And he has said in the past he wants to play till 45. So
he's got his best arsenal of weapons. I mean, we talked about it. It's AB's
whether or not they're going to be able to hang on to, because both Godwin and AB will be unrestricted free agents at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. All right, so that brings us to championship weekend, and we open up with those Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up to Lambeau, 3:00 on Sunday. The Packers are 3-point favorites. The total is set at 51. The one thing that I'm most confident is this baby's going over.
Definitely. And I mean, the Bucs defense saw some success this week, and I think that was more a product of facing Drew Brees and an offense that just can't stretch vertically, and that it couldn't be further from the truth this week against Aaron Rodgers. He's incredibly efficient, but he has an ability to go down the field. They move around their pieces so well. And I don't know if you saw this report. Vita Vea has been activated off the physically unable to perform list. I think he practiced today, so he might log some snaps. And I've always had that feeling with this Bucs defense. Ever since he went down with, I think it was an ankle injury, they just haven't looked the same at all, because that front was just so dominant. They could rush with 4. They could disguise their pressures with Shaq Barrett, JPP, and their inside backers. I mean, Devin White was just absolutely unbelievable in that New Orleans game. He's flying everywhere. He's in the backfield. He's great in coverage. He's just – I mean, he's a freak athlete. I love watching that guy play. And Levante David. I mean, he's been an absolute force for the last decade, one of the more underrated guys. But Taylor Heineke lit him up 2 weeks ago. We've seen this Bucs defense pretty susceptible to pretty porous days. Not like the first half of the year where they looked dominant. And now one of those performances was against the Packers, I think, week 6, where they won 38-10. in Tampa Bay, and they were just absolutely dominant. They haven't looked like that the past month, the past 2 months to me. I just don't think they're going to have any answers for this Green Bay offense.
No, this is going to be one of those, and Aaron Rodgers now has if he hasn't been playing with a chip on his shoulder this entire year, when you look at the whole Jordan Love drafting in the first round, and everyone's saying the end is coming for Aaron Rodgers, and he comes out and has the MVP season. Now he gets to play in the NFC Championship game against Tom Brady. That can only be even more motivating for Aaron Rodgers. And when he has that extra motivation, there are some people that when they get too up, they get too motivated.
Baker.
It affects them negatively. Not Aaron Rodgers.
He's cold.
And speaking of cold, you have the cold may not hamper Tom Brady because he spent all those years in New England, but how is it going to affect the other guys on this team? The guys
pass catchers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Brown played in Pittsburgh, so I think he would be the one that maybe the go-to guy this week because he has the big game passed. He has the cold game passed. We'll see what happens, but for me,
well, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, Mike Evans, Texas A&M at Tampa Bay his whole career. Godwin, Penn State, sure, but Tampa Bay his whole career. This O-line, I'm not going to worry about. It's a nasty unit. But Ronald Jones, Tampa Bay his whole career. Leonard Fournette, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. And these running backs have had huge issues catching the ball out of the backfield. How's that going to go in Lambeau? I mean, and they're going to lean on those guys. They're going to be counted on. So that's definitely a good point, and people don't want to bring it up, but weather in January football in the playoffs, it is the ultimate equalizer, is the ultimate X factor that you have to account for. It's a big deal.
Yeah, just ask the Baltimore Ravens this past week.
Oh my gosh!
Right, so let's make picks for this weekend.
So, I mean, I will easily lay the 3 with Green Bay. I mean, I love that spread. I understand it's Tom Brady. That scares me a little bit in a one-game setting, but you laid it out perfectly. This just is Rodgers' year. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has that look in his eyes. He is just revitalized in this offense. And this is probably a career year for him. And what is he, 36 or 37? I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what he's been doing this year. I think it's the cherry on top, going to the Super Bowl against a guy like Mahomes or Josh Allen. So I love laying the 3 there, and I'm with you. I'm taking the over.
Yeah, I will also lay the 3, take the over. It just feels like you said, it feels like it's meant to be for Aaron Rodgers. And as good as well as the cornerbacks have played at times for Tampa Bay, they're
my money on Adams.
Yeah. I'll take Devontae Adams in that matchup. And then to wrap up championship weekend, we have the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Buffalo Bills, 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. The Chiefs are 3-point favorites. The total is set at 54.
So I mean, it just felt like these two were destined to play each other in the AFC Championship. They were just head and shoulders better than everyone in the conference. I truly believe this is probably, I mean, these 4 teams very well could be the 4 best teams in football throughout the regular season. I think the Bucs had some difficult breaks and had to figure out chemistry. But, I mean, the Chiefs and the Bills for most of the year were 2 of the top 3 teams in football. So I'm so excited for this matchup. I'm expecting a lot of points. I think the Bills are going to look to bounce back from last week. I think their defense is feeling really good about themselves, but Kansas City's another animal. And the thing that you and me had talked about a lot, I was expecting some rust from them, from that offense, but they were it was like they hadn't skipped a beat. They were just firing on all cylinders from the start. There were no obstacles, no issues. And I understand it's Cleveland's defense. It's not the greatest defense in the world. I think Buffalo is going to be a little bit tougher. But I'm leaning towards the Chiefs with Mahomes looking like he's going to play. I just think they have too much firepower. We saw it, but what do you do against this team? The clip went viral, but Cleveland elected to go in a sub package with Denzel Ward on Travis Kelce on a third down in the goal line, and he runs a reverse whip, and he looked like Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams running it. He just broke so fast off Denzel Ward, a top 5 pick who's lived up to that stature. He's one of the better corners in football, and he made him fall. And if you're Cleveland, you're going before the game, you're like, yeah, that's a matchup we're probably going to win. There's a reason we're matching up Denzel Ward there. He's that security blanket. Corners, high-level corners came and shut down Travis Kelce. You have Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, all this speed. You got some juice from Darrell Williams out of the backfield this week. I mean, I'm curious to see what Sean McDermott unveils this week, because it is a very tall order to go in Arrowhead and outscore Kansas City.
It is, and I'm going to pick them to do it. So I'm taking the Chiefs to win outright. The Bills to win outright. There's just something about this Buffalo team that, and now they're going to be playing with house money. They're not expected to win this game. They have, and I know that it's in Kansas City, not in Buffalo, but don't tell me that they don't have the Bills Mafia just implanted in their brains. That this is a franchise and a fan base that absolutely loves this team. And don't be surprised if you see a lot of Buffalo fans there. I don't know the exact amount of fans that are going to be allowed. Sometimes, I mean, I've heard like there's going to be 12,000 fans in the stands. There's going to be 6,000. You can't tell me that that's not 25,000. Come on. It's simple math. All you need to do is look at how many people are in each of the sections, multiply the sections. I'm worried that Patrick Mahomes won't be 100%.
Yeah.
And that if I'm laying money on this game, it would scare me to put money on a quarterback that I don't know if he is 100%.
Yeah.
And having that head injury is something that it doesn't take a lot for Patrick Mahomes to leave this game coming up. So I just think that the Bills offense is firing on all passing cylinders, because they don't need to run the ball. They've shown that they've shown that they don't even need to attempt to run the ball in order to have success. They have four legit receiving options.
I was going to say, I'll throw in Gabriel Davis. Yeah.
Absolutely. Gabriel Davis is going to make John Brown a thing of the past for.
Expendable. Yeah,
he's going to be expendable. I don't see John Brown on this team, because I think Gabriel Davis is ready to step into that role. We saw the success that he had in the games that John Brown missed due to injury. Gabriel Davis is going to be a pretty good player, and I'm glad I have him on both of my dynasty teams.
You bring up a good point. It felt like the Bills were playing a little tense, a little bit of holdback in front of that Buffalo fandom last week. And it's a game you're favored to win, but it's obviously a really tough game. Baltimore is about as good a wild card as it gets. And it was a hard fought game for 3.5 quarters until the pick six happened. But now that monkey is off their backs, as you said. They're playing with house money. It's a revenge game of sorts. It is for a championship. I don't think motivation is the biggest factor, but I do think that they've been chasing down Kansas City in the back of their minds for the last 2 months. They're playing their best football. Their coaching staff is top tier in football on both sides. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I'll pick the Chiefs, but it's a lean. I do not love putting money on the +3 there.
See,
I'm just expecting a great game
because of the Mahomes potential to.
It's a huge question mark.
If you told me I had to put my picks would be Buffalo in the under.
Well, they love to do that speed option stuff on 3rd and short in the goal line with Mahomes. Now, do they not do it? They love to get him on the move, and he's a little more susceptible to getting hit. And we've seen some of his biggest plays, especially last postseason in the Super Bowl against San Fran. He had that long scramble for a touchdown. Is he going to have some holdback now?
Or even that run against Tennessee? I think it was against Tennessee.
Yep.
The 20-yard scramble where he broke 86 tackles, juked out another 26 guys. I mean, that was probably. I know we talked about the best runs by a quarter. That's my favorite run by a quarterback of all time.
Because he's going fast. He's like kind of outrunning guys, but it's Mahomes. I mean, he's got the rib pads, but it looks like he has a little bit of a beer belly going. He's got a little bit of the waddle going. So it's not as graceful as a Lamar Jackson, but I mean, he can make plays on his legs. And is that now going to be put into question as you said it? That is a great point. It's something to monitor, and I'm just really excited for both these games. I mean, I just can't wait.
We were talking last week. We said as long as the Rams don't make it into the championship weekend, we should have 2 great games. And to be honest, I think this is probably the best 2 matchups that we could have asked.
Definitely.
All right, so that is going to do it for us tonight. My God, I can't. There's 3 games left.
It happened so fast. Like the college season was weird. It was a little bit of a blurb to me. Alabama winning was, it wasn't a surprise to anyone, but it was just like, I didn't really care about the college season. The NFL season, we've had like 4 or 5 seasons in one with all the COVID stuff and just so much ambiguity and question marks going into this year throughout the offseason. It's been a fun ride.
Oh my God, it has. And a different ride.
Yes.
Watching games with no fans is weird. Even though it's the same experience from my couch, watching games with no fans in the stands, with artificial noise. And I know you had the exposure to that with the NHL's return to play. And I know basketball did it too, but I don't watch the NBA. But I had that exposure with the NHL's return to play, and it was so completely different for watching football, and we really only had one issue, and that was with the Tennessee Titans. We had a lot of games get threatened to move. We had some were pushed back a couple days. We had the Steelers-Ravens game that got pushed back almost a week, but it was still within the same NFL week. We had for the first time games on all 7 days of the week in one NFL calendar season.
Kendall Hinton.
Oh, the Kendall Hinton experience.
We're never getting that stuff again, for better or for worse. The competitive advantages and disadvantages that we saw this year were really an anomaly. They were quite a roller coaster ride, depending on what team that you're a fan of. But yeah, as you said, it was just it was different. And I enjoyed it. I'm just glad we got football. But NFL football it's the most entertaining. It's the best professional product by far for my money. So I had a blast.
All right. So again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Make sure you're checking out backsportspage.com for all the great stuff that's going up there. I know we have some great things planned for the off season and the draft season. We've got a lot of different Back Sports Page writers and podcasters. We're going to be doing a whole lot of collaborations for the speaking of Combine, did you hear that there isn't going to be one Indianapolis Combine? It looks like there's going to be 4 regional combines.
Yeah, I mean, how did they just play a season and we're doing this again?
Yeah.
It's going to be weird. I mean,
yeah,
maybe it'll be better because we'll just rely more on game tape, and some of these guys probably won't even perform in the combine. But I love the combine. I love the combine.
I mean, I'm one of those.
This is one of my favorite weeks.
I mean, I'm recording. I record every single session that I'm not home for, and that weekend I stay up till 3 a.m. just watching guys in spandex run drills, and it's absurd. I mean, one of my favorite things was it was 2 years ago when DK Metcalf when he ran the gauntlet. When I don't know if you can find DK Metcalf's gauntlet in the combine. I literally started texting people that he should go number 3 overall to the Jets that year.
Yeah, I mean, I love the combine, and a lot of people don't buy in hype. I think older school guys do, and more power to them. That's fine. But I mean, it's the most parallel universe where we can compare guys, and we can see it's the same exact testing that they're going through. And like you said, I mean, I think movement stuff's really important. How guys catch the ball, not even catching versus a drop. It's how they catch it. Are they a natural hands catcher? Are they a D lineman? Are they natural with their hands? Is it robotic? Is it mechanical? I just love that stuff, and not getting a normal combine experience kills me.
Where you're able to watch side by side how players get in and out of breaks, in and out of routes, on the defensive side, how they're able to bend around a corner, and the change of direction. And I know some of these stats are, you say, how does this even make sense? But when you put everything together from a combine, not just one particular, so-and-so ran a 4.31. Darius Hayward Bay. There you go. Darius Hayward Bay made a lot of money because he ran fast at the combine. But not enough people, including the Davis family, looked at the rest of the combine and saw how bad he was at actually playing wide receiver, that you could actually see during the combine. So, so we're going to have a lot of collaboration with some of the other football guys. I know the Fourth and Long guys, Tom, who helps us with the fantasy show on Sundays. We're going to do a lot with the combine and the draft coming up. So, and I know if you're watching, John Laub, I know you're going to be a big part of it too. We always love having you on during draft season. I'll give him a plug. Go follow Gridiron Skull 91 on Twitter. He's already getting into the scouting reports, and he does such a good job with the Senior Bowl and getting you ready for what you're going to see during the Senior Bowl. So go check out John Laub there. All right, so follow Derek on Twitter at Derek Mountain. I'm at rstern33 at Backsports page on all social media. Derek, let's have a fun football. We're gonna have 6 hours of great football. Just Patrick Mahomes stay healthy, but Buffalo wins. All right, so yeah, that's gonna do. Have fun watching football this weekend, and we'll do this next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right, be well.